This panel, we're talking about employee engagement, and delighted to have three great panelists here. And let's start by just introduce yourselves and give just a snapshot first on what your program is, what maturity level you are, how many employees you're using, and what tools. And I think that'll set the stage for some follow-up questions.
Okay, great. I am Karen Stroop. I am the Chief Digital Officer at WEX. And we started our program pretty much 2 weeks after ChatGPT made its big announcement. We had a board member who was on stage yesterday who was very provocative. And we basically leaned into the belief that we believed that AI will change how we work fundamentally. It's just a question of when, not if. And so that was the foundation of our program. And from then we've really tried to eliminate or reduce the fear of AI and encourage people to use the tools. So we leaned into tools, we leaned into training, to incentives, to leadership, which we can talk more about. Right now we have 75% of our employees who use some form of AI weekly, 50% who use it daily. So we feel really, really good about that. And the tools range from, we're a Google shop, so we have access to all the Gemini tools, ChatGPT for some, and then specific tools. We have a proprietary internal agent called Finn that helps us with our work.
And it's global, right? 6,000 global?
Yeah, sorry, 6,000. We have 6,000 employees globally. Yeah. We have about 10% of those who are the accelerators, so we lean into the adoption curve and really try to help the people who want to run fast. And so those are our early explorers.
Great, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Very interesting. So my name's Andy Stetzler. I'm an enterprise AI lead at the Gates Foundation. And actually, our journeys sound very similar. We rolled out Copilot and ChatGPT roughly a year and a half ago, but we've had enterprise agreements for about 2 years. We did some pilots and some internal benchmarking, and we have some standards for safe and responsible AI use, and we kind of set some groundwork first. But very similar. We've rolled out the tools. Our organization very believes in the future of AI and where that will go. Very similar. We have about 75% of our staff using ChatGPT or Copilot weekly. And we've done a whole slew of things, from learning activities and hackathons and training events and lunch and learns. We have our own internal training team. We build tools. We have other teams that build more like sophisticated enterprise AI tools. And so we've really leaned in, and I think from an organization, we're really bought into this AI journey.
Yeah. And Andy, ballpark, how many full-time and full-time contractors?
Yeah, we have about 2,500 FTE employees globally, so we're a global organization, and then a slew of other contractors, probably upwards of 1,000 to 1,500 on top of that.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Venkat Vedam. I'm from Manulife. Manulife, we're a 160-year-old financial services company, primarily started off as insurance, but I'm part of the wealth and asset management organization. Overall, 40,000 employees globally, and then close to 10,000 in the wealth asset management space. The one thing that I was thinking about as the other two panelists were talking about is how generative AI, this phase that we're in, is such a great leveler. Because I feel like if I answer the question straight away, it feels like I'm repeating year two, because it's the same thing. We started the journey a couple of years ago with the same set of co-pilots and internal version of the tools, and then have individual business aligned teams developing bespoke solutions. But where we are trying to do things internally in terms of adoption is, firstly, 100% of the employees, including contingent workers, contractors, they all have access to common tools. That's the Copilot.
So you said 100% of the 40,000 have access through Copilot? Yeah.
The basic Copilot.
The basic, okay,
Yeah.
Okay, the free version, okay.
And we have an internal version of ChatGPT that we call Chat MFC. Yeah. So both are available for all of our employees. Likewise, for all the developers, we have 100% of the developers have access to GitHub Copilot. So the basic productivity tools we want to make sure that everyone has access to. But there is a difference between does everyone have access to are they empowered to, or are they enabled to? And that's where we're focused on. And at various levels, we have adoption and education teams that are thinking about how do we conduct sessions, sometimes top-down educational sessions. Other times, it's more peer-to-peer knowledge sharing sessions so that folks can think about practically what does it mean to us. So we have 100% of employees enabled or access to the tools, but also we're trying to make sure 100% of employees are enabled and feel empowered to use the tools.
I want to do a tool first, and then I want to go to utilization and challenges. On the tool side, we've seen a lot of companies try to figure out if they can go with Copilot or Copilot and multiple choice. How do you guys think about that? Is it every employee gets a chooser one, and we hope a department has enough continuity to put a gem together, or?
Yeah, so for WEX, we lean into both sides. So first, we have enterprise-wide tools that we are rolling out and have rolled out at scale. And so as I said, we're a Gemini shop. That is a foundational tool that everyone has access to. There are others in that camp. But what we're also leaning into is the experimentation. And so we have an easy process, relatively easy process, for people to add tools that they want to experiment with. So we're getting ready to experiment with a sales optimization tool. And any employee can go in and say, hey, we want to experiment with this. It'll go through all of our security, governance, privacy, et cetera, things, and we'll approve it for a pilot basis. And then you can have a runoff. We ask that people have metrics that they're piloting against and saying, how does this tool perform versus other tools? And ultimately, we believe that we'll end up with one tool, but we don't want to limit ourselves at the beginning. So really embracing that experimentation up front. And then from an architecture perspective, we have a principle that we build everything as a two-way door decision. So from a customer experience, we know where we are. We have a North Star. But which tool, which vendor, which partner, we don't know. And, it's a race out there. And so we're building to be flexible and interchangeable in terms of who the best partner might be.
Yeah. Andy, you've dealt with this, right?
Yeah.
Half departments using Copilot, the other half using ChatGPT. You've got one compliance team.
Yeah. So I think kind of similar in the sense of, where we have signed like enterprise agreements, where we have like, for example, our data is not going back to inform their models and that sort of stuff. We have those tools available to everyone, and that's like you can put our internal data into those tools, rubber stamp, you can use those. But I think even within that context, it's very challenging of like, for example, like when do I use Copilot? When do I use ChatGPT? I get asked quite frequently, specifically with other nonprofits, like, hey, I can only afford one. Like, what do I go with? And what I say is like, I love the ability that we have the flexibility that we can use multiple tools and pilot and experiment and compare, which is a luxury. But I would say for people that just only can afford one, just go with one and ride their roadmap.
And does it matter which one, or just
yeah,
pick one?
No, if you're a Microsoft shop, obviously Copilot is a preferred tool because it's like integrated into your tools if you're a heavy Microsoft shop. But we're also seeing that ChatGPT is a preference. It's the verb. Like I ChatGPT'd it. No one's saying I Copilot it or I Gemini'd it or and so like a lot of people are just using that tool. And then there's also like the shadow IT component of it as well that I've heard of like, hey, well I use Copilot as an organization, but also people are just using ChatGPT. So I feel like I need to go sign enterprise agreements. So I feel like there's kind of a race. There's a lot of feature parity. There's always like, what tool do I use for which? And they're kind of one-upping each other. And it's an interesting place to be. And it's great that
when a department wants to do a GPT or a GEM, do you have one tool you recommend? Use Microsoft Studio, or are you still experimenting?
Yeah, we actually have like a matrix right now that's living of like, hey, this is our current tech stack and this is where things shine.
Yeah.
And so we kind of leave it up to the customer at this point.
Okay.
But we do give recommendations based on that current tech stack. But yeah, that could be, a problem in the future when you've got all these things built in all these different areas. Yeah. But, we're still kind of in that experimentation phase.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of Gen AI 101 training, and we've got 2 companies now that trained on Copilot, and then they went back and retrained on ChatGPT because the shadow IT stayed on ChatGPT because the preference was so strong, including some of the executives. So it's a real challenge to pick the right one. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you may feel like I'm ChatGPT paraphrasing the responses because we're in the same journey. But yeah, one of the common questions that we have in these educational training sessions is, which tool do we use? And that was part of the reason why we started this peer exchange of ideas. So we don't have to tell the answer. Their peers can tell the answers. These are the situations where this internal tool works for us, especially if there is internal knowledge base, documents in SharePoint, then this tool really works. Again, and not all of the employees have access to the Pro Copilot. They will have all the SharePoint, everything connected. So most of them have access to the basic Copilot, which is a chat and with web search. But that's what the other response from peer exchanges has been. The internal tool is not connected to a web search, so it doesn't have current knowledge. It has SharePoint, internal company documentation, but it doesn't have current knowledge. So the general response that folks get is, if you need internal knowledge grounded in internal company values and responses, use the internal tool. If you need current responses, if you need a web search, then use the Copilot tool. But that's only those two tools. But as we go about thinking about any document research type agents and other capabilities that we're building, we're looking at the same approaches of building a matrix, a capability matrix, to say, these are all the functions, these are all the capabilities, and these are the tools that go with each of those capabilities.
Look, is it 5 minutes or 17 minutes? Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. Thank you. We'll set second stage. Yeah. So we've seen, and sir, if you've seen as well, probably multiple companies say, "Great, this is our usage. We rolled it out. We look at it each week. Not just a number, but we've got 5 or 6% power users using that. It just drops off like that." Do you guys see that? Is that a problem? Do we care? I've got 2 or 3 organizations, well, we've got to get this up. Other ones like, yeah.
I feel like you should answer this. Go first.
Thank you. That's true. And one of the ways that we found success with that is conducting these frequent knowledge sharing sessions. And also within Manulife, it's a remnant from the COVID time. We have what's called a Fuel Up Friday. Every first Friday, every month, the afternoon is allocated for learning, and also.
I think it's the first Friday each month.
Each month, yeah.
The whole day?
After.
Half a day.
Yeah,
okay.
half a day.
And that's global?
Used to be the whole
worldwide,
day,
or?
and it's now shrunk to half day.
Yep.
But yeah, so we have some structured programs for folks to join office hours or attend like webinars to listen to like one-directional sessions, but also conduct knowledge sharing sessions, or give them access to LinkedIn Learning or Pursuit Learning type of opportunities to, and we build course curriculum or course paths for them to learn. But all of those, what that has enabled is these regular nudges to say, this is what's happening across the company. These are the new things that are happening in the industry. These are the new features in the tool. So those opportunities, we use them as a way to not just educate, but also continue driving engagement. Yeah. So the graph falls, and then there is this engagement session, and then it picks up.
And the theory behind it, I guess, is that at least more education engagement, that might get those hours up?
What's that?
Will that get those hours up? Is the thesis that
yeah.
with more exposure and cultural norm changes that?
It gets a big boost, and then what we've seen is that it stabilizes at a much higher level.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen that exact curve too. I know a lot of organizations have, and we're really focused on that middle section. We're not really. I mean, there's different communities. We do have a power community to the right side, and then there's the left. But we're kind of really focused on that lifting up the middle. And we've done a whole slew of things. One thing that we've learned is like that continued drip campaign of information, whether it be the trainings and the lunch and learns and the newsletters and the, hey, at your all hands, we're going to have 5 minutes and we're going to demo a use case and a win, and just encouragement and incentivize, and we're doing a lot of things to kind of lift that up, and we're continuing to see month over month growth of just general use. I mean, it's kind of incredible. Like every month, I'm like, when are we going to flatten out? And we have not flattened out yet. It's just been almost like linear, just continued growth from just volume within the platforms, which is interesting.
So make sure I'm listening. So the early adopters, they're gone. The left tail, they're the skeptics. You're not going to get them.
Yeah, the right side is like, give me the API and get out of my way.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, I'm good. You're just, give me the tools. But yeah.
That's great, yeah.
So I think our journey is very similar to Andy's. We seem to be on parallel paths. So a couple things I would add that are a little bit different. So we have for our power users, we call them the AI accelerators, and we really lean in and support those folks. They have a very vibrant community where they're sharing with each other, they're sharing out. I don't worry so much about the tail of 25% who aren't using it. I don't think everyone's going to change. And so I don't feel like that's a good ROI from an investment perspective. They'll either get on board or they won't. But that middle section is where we focus quite a bit. And what I've seen there is interest and there's willingness, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And the uncertainty is paralyzing. You don't know what to do. You don't necessarily have the motivation to change your behavior. And a lot of this is habit change. And so at the very beginning, to try to change my habits, with my leadership team, I created an accountability chart and said, like, how often are we using AI each week? And at my leadership team meeting, like this was in the early days, I pulled it up. There was either, glory or shame, but we created some accountability, but it really changed my behavior because I felt like I had to lead from the top. And if I wasn't using the tools and figuring it out and talking about the challenges, that others wouldn't do it. The second thing I'm thinking about now, and maybe this isn't as nice, but Melissa mentioned the carrot or the stick yesterday, and we've really leaned into the carrot for the last couple of years. But I see places where I feel like people need to be leaning into AI, and we're not moving at the pace. And so I'm starting to embrace the stick a little bit. The stick might be you have to meet with me every week because this is a place where I can see that the industry is changing. But I think that the people who are going to run are running. Yep. And so it's what are the motivations, shall we say, to unlock that middle at a faster pace. And it's unlocking, but I want to see it keep going.
Hey, when we've got you guys are down the road, what do you know now that you wish you knew 12 months ago?
Yeah, maybe if, I want to just follow up on one of the things that we just talked about. The 25% is interesting because there was one example where we built a document research tool that was geared towards analyst workflows. And there were a few folks, as you can imagine, the 25% that were skeptical. The first question they would ask is, if I have access to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, why do I use your tool? And I don't trust you guys to be any better than those external tools. But we continued engaging with them in some of our knowledge sharing sessions. And one of the guys, he kind of did a rapid fire questionnaire against saying, I'll throw you a couple of documents at you and show me how your tool can do. And then obviously it's not our credit, it was all the work that we had done working with his peers, building the prompts, building the guardrails, building the workflows that make sense for the business. And all the documents, all the questions he threw at us actually converted him. And a couple of weeks after the knowledge sharing session, he spent half the time talking about how he was so excited about it, how he was actually adapting his workflows around it. So I think there is still value to that carrot, but I think the answer is engagement. But obviously, I agree, and that's what's coming top down, is the stick approach to make sure that it's not necessarily saying your job is at risk, but bringing some transparency in terms of adoption, and then make people accountable. If you're not using it, then you're actually leaving money off the table because you could be doing so much more.
Yeah. And probably particularly about their local manager, Yeah. But what's one thing you knew, Andy, you know now that,
Oh my God.
boy, I wish I knew this 12 months ago?
There's a lot of different like ways, I think, to answer that question. I think for us, like, there's also no regrets. Like, when we first rolled out the tools, it was like, let's get it out as quickly as possible, and like, let's move quick. And so we didn't have a lot of these foundational things. Like, we weren't going to just wait months and months, to go do these things. But I think like one of the biggest things was, this is a more, in the sky, this is a people thing. This is not a tech thing. This is not a rollout tech thing. And we have a team that rolls out technology, and we're really good at that. We were really good at building a team that comes in and is like, I'm going to train you to use Copilot and ChatGPT. But that's not the problem. It's a people problem, and bringing people leadership along early is something that I would recommend, as well as other leaders across the organization from that people lens. So I think that would be the
And does it
lesson
have to
learned.
be at the enterprise level, or is it really at the department level?
Yes.
Okay.
Across the board.
Yeah.
It's something that's very, I think is very important.
What'd you learn, Karen?
So first, I think it is all about leadership. As much as the technology is important, it is about the mindset, and it's at leadership at every level. If you're not encouraging, experimenting, showcasing, and so we need to make sure that as we look at the senior leadership team and leaders across the board, that this is important to them, and that they're learning externally, that they're role modeling this. And the people shift that is happening is going from AI will replace me to AI will help amplify me and help me be better at my job. The other thing I learned is, I think in the early days we focused a lot on the technology itself, which technology is going to win, et cetera, and we kind of forgot about some of the truisms, the fundamentals that will never change. And a truism is technology is in service to the problem you're solving. Mm-hmm. And I see some of these teams they fall in love with the technology and the solution, and they forget that they're solving a problem. And so the rapid experimentation, the hypothesis, like that loop, we actually sometimes forget. And so making sure that there are some things that are consistent throughout this journey, regardless of how the technology changes, I think is actually really important for leadership to reinforce.
And go ahead.
And yeah, our learning has been the same thing. We focused, I can still remember so many of those early sessions where we talked about what is GPT, what is an LLM, what is retrieval augmented generation, what are vector databases. And people paid attention, but it was for nothing, right? Because that was not solving any of the real problems. So if one thing that I would have changed based on what I know a year ago, not go into the details, talk about real use cases.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing, because we see this a lot too, is like people take the GPT hammer to things.
Oh, yeah.
And so like really it's like, oh geez, are we helping people build a tool? Are we really trying to solve their business problems? Yeah. Because like a lot of times the answer is not a GPT or an agent or whatever, which I think is interesting.
How do we deal with the skeptical or pragmatic CFO? So wait a minute, we're distracting my 40,000 employees. You're telling me there's biggest usage here. Where is it showing up in the P&L? What kind of program is this? Is this a belief system, or is there? How do you justify spending a minute on these programs?
The one thing
Did that ever happen?
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing that worked for us is drip, drip, drip. So instead of saying you're going to have this massive outcome 2 years down the line, and instead of saying you can't expect anything right away, we build pilots and then show value with pilots. And then we're not there yet, but we're trying to make sure that those pilots, the benefits of the pilots, kind of feed themselves. So we can show we executed the first version, the savings that we got from it, we reinvest into the second pilot and then broaden the scope. And then we recapture that 6 months, 1 year down the line, and then reinvest. So that's the idea. But yeah, we're not solved that yet.
Yeah, I think for us, I think at the Gates Foundation, we're maybe a little bit unique we're unique in quite a few ways, but I think one area is that our executive leadership and our chair very much believes in this technology, and they are bought in. And so this is an investment, and this is a belief, and we have the space for experimentation. We're not turning on the tools and saying, now what's the ROI? some of that comes, and we do have some measures, and we are looking at certain things. But as an organization, we are in the experimentation phase, and that is acknowledged. And I think having that top level support of that is really important.
Yeah, so we talk about this a lot as a public company who has to deliver in all time horizons. And fundamentally, we do believe in AI. Our board believes in it. Our leadership team believes in it. And so there is fundamental commitment, which is great. If I think about the short term, what we've really gravitated towards is finding those impactful use cases where we can show ROI. Originally, we were trying to track the ROI of every project across the organization, and it was exhausting. And we didn't really get a return on trying to track the ROI of everything. But picking the bigger projects and having the strategic messages, I think, is really important from winning the heart of the CFO. We also play the long game, which is talking about how we could be disrupted if we're not investing in this. And so what is the future of experience? What's the future of architecture? How are other startups potentially solving these problems with new tools and new capabilities that could create more value? And that would lead to an erosion of our customer base. And so it's like deliver, prove the worth in the short term, and create a little bit of inspiration and fear for the long term.
That's great. I know we're fighting lunch here. Questions in the audience? Who's got a question? Everyone's hungry? So let's, the last question I want to, how do we think about our employee base? So we've got these amazing tools. We've got core competencies in many of our positions, not all of them. This is redefining knowledge work. Do we need to redefine core competencies going forward here? If you can't adopt fast, you shouldn't. I mean, how do we think about the core competency coming into the new employee base?
Yeah, I actually think the core competency is something that we should have been looking for all along. I look for curiosity and passion. And I think those capabilities are incredibly important to reimagining your existing work, exploring tools, looking externally. Like you can't teach that, but you can teach everything else that sits around it. So I would say go back to our roots. Look for people who are curious and passionate, maybe hardworking, and double down on those folks.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this with a little bit different, answering this question a little differently, because I believe especially a younger workforce, they're growing up on these tools, they're using it in high school, middle school, college, right? And eventually use will just come, adoption's going to come. Like, I'm not really worried about that bottom tier. Like, I think things will just change. I think what I'm really most interested in the enterprise perspective, though, is around how we're using AI for more of like business transformation, not just for that productivity use, thinking about like how are we actually embedding it into the way we work behind the scenes. And so like that question of like, what is your adoption? Like, no one's going to ask that question anymore. It's just going to be 100% because like you don't have a choice. That's a process, and this is the way things work. So I think like that's kind of a lens, like, kind of also to think through.
And Andy, just on that, I mean, I think if you think about the average person in Netflix or Amazon, the average person doesn't know that AI is solving the problem, nor do they care. And I think that will be part of, if you fast forward to the future, it's just going to be how we work.
It seeps in the background, yeah.
Yeah, I think my answer is twofold. Right? One, for folks who are building solutions or developing solutions, I would look for folks that are curious and have the hack mindset, who can quickly explore and develop solutions. For folks who are consuming that, in addition to curiosity, I would also like for folks, at least part of the team, to be skeptics, so that at least skeptics not in the way to block things, but trust but verify.
And the balance, yeah.
I'm not proud of it, but I drive a Tesla, and self-driving, I always think about how does connect that, how does that connect to AI solutions. It works most of the time, and when it doesn't, I have to be paying attention. And that's the same thing I want to avoid in the team. So I need someone who's always going to be questioning it. So I think that's one thing that I always think about in building the teams around AI.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we're fighting lunch, and we'll end up here, but really appreciate the panel. One thing that we see a lot in GI world is talking to companies that are just starting, 0%, 10%. So a lot of really great wisdom here. So thank you, everyone. Help me thank the panel here, everyone.